all the people that screamed, "Oh my God, we can't deal with insurrectionists," now need to face facts that almost the entirety of their party is sympathetic to insurrectionists. Ben, can you hear me?
Hey Rob, how's it going?
Doing great. What's up today?
Awesome. Now I was just wondering when we can start calling these things insurrection.
What specifically are you talking about? Like the Trump Tower business that
Yeah,
happened yesterday?
yeah. That'd be a good start. Yeah.
Well, so it's interesting. If you use the definition of insurrection that people like Destiny and Pisco that I've debated use, then these would be insurrections. There were four parts to that. Let me see if I could remember what their definition said. One, it had to be a gathering of people, more than one person. Clearly, it meets that criteria. Second, it had to be that it was for a public issue. Right. So, for example, if me and you and 20 people get together and we start rioting because we want our friend Bill broken out of prison, that wouldn't qualify as an insurrection. But if we start rioting because we want the law that Bill was arrested for, say tax evasion, we want that law revoked, then that could be an insurrection because it's focused on the broader law. I think that's true of, I think this Trump Tower business would meet that qualification, right? Because Trump is an executive and they want Trump and Doge out and lawful orders that Doge is doing. And so, or I don't even know what the hell was it there. Were they protesting over the Khalil guy? Is that what it was?
I believe so. Yeah.
Yeah. So like sort of deportation type orders and things like that. And so, yeah, that would meet that criteria. Third would have to be that it used violence or intimidation. Certainly the amount of people there, that the way they were screaming and the things they were saying, that, for example, you had people shouting that they supported Hamas and things like that, that it's a violent terrorist organization. That would meet the criteria of violence or intimidation. And the fourth, I forget what the fourth part of it is. Has to be more than one person, has to be for a community thing, violence, intimidation. I think that's pretty much it. So according to their definitions, that's an insurrection.
Mm-hmm.
Like, that's why I argued how absurd their definitions were every time I debated them. And Andrew Wilson did the same thing. Their definition's too broad. If you remember when Andrew Wilson debated Destiny on this, he got Destiny to admit that if three hippies got together and were protesting smoking pot and that it should be legal, and they started shoving the police officers, that's an insurrection. Now, why does this matter? Well, two reasons. One, it legally matters because there are crimes on the books that could be charged based on having an insurrection. The one that matters the most in the case that we were talking about when we were debating them was that anyone who engages in an insurrection and held a public office is no longer able to hold public office again. That's why they tried to keep Trump off the ballot. They said he engaged in an insurrection. Using their very loose definition of insurrection, there would be thousands of insurrections every year. Many of the Black Lives Matter protests would be insurrections. So why wouldn't those Democrats that engaged in that also be kept off the ballot? Well, that's, you know the answer to that. They don't give a shit about the double standard. So the real issue with that was, did Trump engage in the insurrection? Which the answer is no. Their definition is too broad, but even if you say that's what an insurrection is, Trump did not engage with it. That's number one. The second thing is more nefarious, though. It's the term itself. Forget about the legal nature of it. It's how you could control the narrative by using that term, right? They are insurrectionist, and what that means. And so, yeah, I think you can call them insurrectionist. Why not? Seems fair to me. And I think that all the people that screamed, "Oh my God, we can't deal with insurrectionists," now need to face facts that almost the entirety of their party is sympathetic to insurrectionists.
So, why do you think we don't take left-wing violence as seriously? Is it because the mainstream media has that sort of bias where, it's a big deal when, conservatives do something like this, but not when liberals do? Because I feel like we're really desensitized to it because it happens all the time.
It's because almost every institution in this country views the left-wing violence as acceptable and beneficial to them.
Like moral.
They are their brown shirts, right?
Right.
They want let's take our politics out of it for a second, right? Do you remember there was this moment on Bill Maher's show way back before Sam Cedar totally lost his mind, where Sam Cedar's a guest and Ben Affleck was a guest? And Sam
Sam Harris.
Oh yeah, did I say Sam Harris? I'm so sorry. Thank you. Yeah, not Sam Cedar. Yeah, I don't know that he's ever not been full of it. Anyway, Sam Harris, he's making this point about Islam, and it's a prudent point. It still applies in today's world. He's like, actually, most polling when they poll people of the Islamic faith in a lot of these countries, only like 5% of them are willing to personally use violence to achieve their religious goals. But the problem is the next group, which is like 15 to 20%, that themselves won't engage in violence, but they support or accept the 5% that do. Now, why would they do that? Well, and then of course, Ben Affleck's like, that's gross. That's gross. It's like, yeah, deal with the argument, dude. The point is, if you remember back then, you had all of these attacks like the Charlie Hebdo attack, where they went in, where there was Muhammad in a satirical magazine in France, and they went into this newspaper studio and gunned down and killed all these people that worked there. And then you had the Dutch picture of Muhammad with a bomb on his head, and all of these people rioted, and there was a bunch of death threats over that, etc. And then you could go back even further with the Satanic Verses written by Salman Rushdie, where there was a fatwa put on him, a price put on his head. Was it effective? Well, no newspaper in the United States would show those pictures, would they? South Park tried to depict Muhammad, and they got shit on for it. No, you can't do it, said Comedy Central. The truth is, even though most Muslims, in fact, the majority of Muslims would probably find that behavior despicable, over 50%. And it's only a small portion, though, if you're talking billions of people, 5% is a huge number that's willing to use violence, but it's relatively a small percentage that's willing to use the violence. But there's so many people that are like, I guess we're getting our way. I guess that's not bad. They learned, didn't they? They're not going to show those pictures anymore, are they? And it's weird because as someone like me that decries political violence all the time, the truth is, it can be effective, at least in short-term goals, but it can only be effective when the situation's right. The reason that left-wing violence has been effective is because it's been seen as useful from the people in charge of these institutions. So when you see Chris Wray say, the head of the FBI say, well, Antifa's just an idea. Now, you could go back years, and you could see even at the start of the Proud Boys, the Proud Boys were basically just like an adult fraternity. It was stupid. Like Gavin Newsom was one of the dudes that created it. They were just like drinking buddies that to get what do they call it? Jumped into the Proud Boys. They would all punch you in the arm while you had to name like 20 cereals. Like that's how childish it was. It's just like, but what happened was they saw that you had all these right-wing rallies, not even protests, just like rallies where these Antifa people were showing up with weapons and beating the shit out of people. And so they were like, yeah, we're going to show up. And if Antifa shows up, we're going to fight back. And that's what happened. And and there's websites that, there's material that's put out by these Antifa groups. They're easy to find, but the FBI's like, oh, we don't know about none of that. It's just an idea. Like being Antifa is just like being Federalist. Same thing. It's just a political ideology. It's not, these aren't groups. These aren't people doing things. And so what happens is, what they're really saying is, we don't mind what Antifa's doing. We don't like the populist movement. So we're okay with people being afraid. Right now, we see all of this doxing occurring, right? I'll be honest with you. I love doing what I do. Everything that I say here, I sincerely believe. I hope that it helps drive the country in a better direction. I sincerely do. And it's not just this. I do things like knocking on doors, and I've, called, trying to get elections, and I show up to Republican meetings, and I do this and that, I hope that the country goes in a better direction. I do. And I'm entertained by it. It's my hobby. This is what I like doing. But I love my family first. If I got swatted every day, would I continue this? I don't know. And they know that fear being out there will dox you, will swat you, will call your place of employment, will get you fired, will make your life a living hell. Well, why isn't anyone taking this seriously? And you might say, well, now they'll start to. This has been going on for years. How many times has Tim Pool been swatted? Mm-hmm. They just don't give a shit. Because deep down, these establishment institutions, the same ones that if you saw my debate with Connor, right, where I was talking about like, look, we see how the National Endowment of Democracy gets money from the taxpayers and then pressures foreign governments like Poland to arrest populist candidates in Poland. And Connor's like, that's fine. Populism sucks. Well, if our foreign policy apparatus feels that way globally, which they do, and you could listen to Mike Benz talk about this a lot, you don't think they feel about that domestically with populism back home? So are they going to be chomping at the bit to arrest people that are physically harassing populists or Christians? Again, if you even stand outside an abortion clinic and pray, you're looking at 10 years at jail with the FBI showing up with guns drawn in front of your children, dragging you out of your house. If you bomb pro-life centers or, vandalize them in any way, would Chris Wray say, well, most of those crimes occur in the evening, so we've had difficulties. It's always the same. The FBI is used to go after angry parents at school board meetings. But how much left-wing violence do we see all the time? And it's just like, I mean, and it goes right down to, it's so sad because you could get down, like, why don't they crack down on, like, inner city violence, right? And a lot of it has to do with, they just don't give a shit. They see it as partially useful. And yes, I'm talking to you, Black community. They want that violence occurring in your communities. They do. That's why it's allowed to carry on. But boy, oh boy, man, if you're a right-winger who even showed up on January 6th and did nothing, they're going to find your ass, man. The sedition hunters are all over you. So I guess to answer your question, why don't we take left-wing violence seriously? Because these institutions that have shaped our discourse and shape our policy and legal system, they don't mind the left-wing violence. They find it to be useful. As soon as it's not useful, then they'll take it seriously. And then all of a sudden we'll be like, oh, so for example, if the left-wing violence would start targeting left-wing institutions, if Antifa would have followed Christopher Wray home and tried to break into his house, it would have been a serious deal. Now, oh my goodness, you can't do that, but as long as it's Tucker Carlson or it's Rand Paul being beat up or it's conservatives that are getting swatted or it's Donald Trump's building that's getting overwhelmed, hey, and they'll say when pressed on it, they'll be like, yeah, that's not a good thing. But January 6th, you remember that? That's what they'll do. But the truth is, many of the people that are like, yeah, it's not a good thing, they don't really care. They don't care at all. And hey, if an added bonus to that is it helps keep populism down and conservatism down, so be it.
Yeah, it's whatever they can concede to that they don't mind conceding to. It's not a moral principle. Like it's convenient for them to not like be Biden fans because you can't say anything about Biden. They'll be like, yeah, XYZ that he did was bad. Yeah, it was bad, but that doesn't hurt their position of the anti-Trump thing. So
that's exactly right. That's what they always do. And I've told this story many times, but one of the first times I debated Brianna Wu, like they, whatever. Don't ban me, YouTube, like Twitch, you fucking idiot. Anyways, we were talking about, it was Connor and the panel, and it was Destiny was on there, Brianna, and some other people, and it was, is the Trump case with the classified documents, does it show that Trump did something really bad, or is it an evidence of double standards that we've seen from places like the FBI? Of course, I'm arguing that it's double standard, and not to go through the entire debate, but I'm able to, like, it's so funny because when they start, I'm like, well, what's really bad that Trump did? Well, he tried to move boxes. He said that's what he did. It wasn't just a classified. He didn't cooperate. He moved boxes. And you're like, oh, okay. So
if I had my eyes closed, I would think that was her.
It's pretty good, right? Yeah. So so it's obstruction of justice. Oh, and it's like, well, did they get those boxes back? Yeah, I guess. Okay. Well, when Hillary's team got a lawful subpoena to submit emails, they deleted them, and they never got those back. That's clearly obstruction of justice, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I guess. And so when you go through it, and then like you start to talk about it, and they try to ignore that can't be true. That can't be true. Yeah, it's true. Here's the proof. Well, it was a long time ago. Nonetheless, it happened. And then what she ultimately say at the end? She goes, I guess then Hillary's team should have been charged. But they weren't.
Right.
That's the issue. That's why it's a double standard. But you can say that now. You would have never said that in 2016.
Right.
When the election was coming, you would have never said it. But now that Hillary's not running for office, sure. And the Clintons have a rich history of this. It's like hashtag believe all women. And yet Bill Clinton speaking at all of your fundraisers? Well, I guess Clinton was bad. I guess, yeah, we should have believed his victims and blah, 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 blah. Oh, but it doesn't negatively affect the party now, so you're just like, moving on. And then the few times they'll point to, they'll be like, okay, but what about Al Franken? It's like, right, getting Al Franken off basically still guaranteed that Democrats would control that Senate seat. The same with Bob Menendez. But how about when it would have negatively affected and caused another election that Democrats may have lost? Like Keith Ellison, where we had on tape his wife filming that she was beaten, talking to the police in real time. Hashtag believe all women, right? No, not at all. Keith
or
Ellison,
when Biden was running for president, he was accused. Yep.
Remember, Kamala Harris said she believed the women.
Right.
She believed them. And so then why are you working for this guy? You believe that this guy, at best, is a serial sexual harasser? And you're like, now, I understand those women said, well, we're still going to vote for Biden. That's fine, right? But still, that's your boss. You believe him? By the way, she also claimed that he was a racist because he was against busing. So she was willing to take the VP job for a racist sexual harasser. Yep. Great job, Kamala. There's a person of principles, huh? But it would have been different if she would have said, I don't believe it. Then that's different, But
to be fair, I know it's a little bit different, but you could make the same or similar argument for the Vance Trump.
Well, that's true with him saying that, but he did answer for it. Kamala never answered. Vance was like, yeah, I bought into the mainstream press, and it was when I said that he was, Hitlerian or whatever, and I was wrong to do so. Kamala never said, yeah, you know what? It turns out that first off, it's hilarious that the press never asked her, which I remember back in the day screaming in 2020. It's like, when's someone from the press going to ask her about this?
Right.
Which of course they never did. But second, her answer would have, I know her answer would have been like, buh, 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 and they would have skipped over it. But probably the acceptable answer would have been like, listen, I looked into it. I no longer think that it was as it was advertised. I've talked to Joe. I think that maybe there was a misunderstanding, and I regret saying that I believed him during, while I was running against him. That would have been at least an answer. Mm-hmm. Instead, the one time she was asked, she basically said like, "Oh, people say things during a campaign." Okay. Yeah, people say your record on the economy sucks and then they go to work for you. They don't say you're a serial sexual harasser and then go to work for you. That seems a bit more. Do you mind if I read a couple super chats real quick?
Yeah, go for
it. Vita for $5 says insurrection defined by destinies. 1, a concerted effort by a group, right? We got that. Second, resistance to a law or government proceeding, right? We got that. The proceeding of kicking Khalil out. Use of force, which can be physical or intimidation, right? We have that. For the public purpose or a national grievance, right? So yeah, according to Destiny's definition, yes, the Trump Tower, but all of these, like every time you see them, how many times have we seen them occupy a government building?
Oh, constantly.
It's constant.
Kavanaugh
which would almost every time meet their definition. Almost every time.